Good evening. Welcome to Thursday night Bible study here at Forest Chapel. I'm Pastor David, and tonight we are studying the book of Ezekiel. Now, to get right into the book, at this point in the history of Israel, the Jews have been taken captive by King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. And this is actually his second invasion of Judah in 597 BC. One of the Jews that is taken captive was Ezekiel. Now, in a previous invasion in the year 606, about roughly 10 years prior to this, Daniel had been taken captive by the Babylonians. Now, Ezekiel would end up being the prophet to the Jews while they are in exile, while Daniel would end up serving as God's ambassador to the court of the king. Let's take a look at what that exile looked like. So here we're looking at the Middle East, and down here you'll see Judah and Jerusalem, and Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians coming from the north, attacking to the south. They take the city, and before destroying the city, they capture the people. They take the military victory, but they haven't destroyed the city, anything like that, and they take the captives. The way that they would go is this way along the Mediterranean and traveling north, and then making the loop around, and then roughly following the line of the Euphrates River, then south down into Babylonia. And you'll see the names of some various cities here in Babylon where the Jews were taken to different areas within Babylon and resettled there. This was a usual tactic in those years of invading armies, was to take many of the people from the countries they had conquered, especially people who had knowledge, scientists, teachers, people who definitely could help out in their own country. And it was a twofold reason. One, because those individuals could help the conquering nation, and also because those were likely to be, if they stayed in the area, in their home area, more likely to be ones that could organize some kind of resistance against the invading army. So they took the talented, they took the educated, the elite with them, along with others, and brought them to Babylon, and then resettled them there. Another typical tactic, once they had removed many of the people, they would bring people from perhaps other areas that they had conquered and settle them in a new area. And again, the idea was to get them out of their normal homes, to get them out of what they considered their home or their lands, and people were less likely to cause trouble. But they are down here in Babylon, and we have Ezekiel, who is with them in Babylon, and he's moving amongst the people and speaking and preaching to the people. Whereas Daniel, who was taken on a previous raid of Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel will end up working in the palace and be kind of an interpreter or ambassador to the palace and to the king and to the royalty for the Jewish people. Now, like Jeremiah, Ezekiel was a priest as well as a prophet. Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 3. The word of the Lord came to Ezekiel the priest, the son of Buzi, by the Kibar River in the land of the Babylonians. There the hand of the Lord was upon him. Ezekiel the priest. Ezekiel was 30 years old when he began his ministry here in Babylon, and he was ministering to the Jews that were all gathered there. He had been captive for 5 years already in Babylon when he began to prophesy. Verse 2 of chapter 1. On the 5th month, it was the 5th year of the exile of King Jehoiakim. The word of the Lord came to Ezekiel the priest, the son of Buzi. For 6 years, he began to tell the people of the coming fall of Jerusalem. And his messages about the coming fall of Jerusalem will take up about a half of the book, 24 chapters, with him telling the people Jerusalem is going to be destroyed. He was preparing them for this because, to their knowledge, the city had not been destroyed. And as long as they knew the city had not been destroyed, there was this little bit of hope that they were holding on to. And Isaiah needed to let them know that the city is yet to be destroyed, but it will. Ezekiel means strengthen. God strengthens. And it was very important that he would be there to strengthen the people, to help them understand and to help prepare them for that. Now, the author of the book is Ezekiel himself, and he recorded everything that God said to him and that God showed him. The central message of the book, we read 70 times, they shall know that I am the Lord. Ezekiel chapter 6, verse 7. Your people will fall slain among you, and you will know that I am the Lord. In the same chapter, in verse 10, and they will know that I am the Lord. I did not threaten in vain to bring this calamity on them. And we'll go to verse 13. And they will know that I am the Lord, when their people lie slain among their idols and around their altars, on every high hill and on all the mountaintops, under every spreading tree and every leafy oak, places where they offered fragrant incense to all their idols. 70 times, God says, they shall know that I am the Lord. Now, the structure of the book. I'm going to go ahead and share with you an outline that you can kind of follow along. With as we go through our study. Here's our outline of the book of Ezekiel, and here's the structure of the basic structure of the book. The first section of the book, chapters 1 through 3, they deal with the call and the commission of Ezekiel. Then from chapters 4 through 24, it's judgments on Jerusalem. And there are a couple of subsections within those. There are prophecies of judgment in chapters 4 through 7. Chapters 8 through 11, there are reasons for the judgment upon Jerusalem. And chapters 12 through 24 have symbols that God has shown Ezekiel and messages of judgments. Then from chapter 25 to 32, the judgments are on the foes of Judah, judgments upon the enemies of Judah who did not help the nation of Judah out. Chapters 33 to 39 deal then with Israel's resurrection. This is where Ezekiel is comforting, he's strengthening, he's saying there will be a return. We will come back as a nation. God will raise you up. And then the last section of Ezekiel, 8 chapters from chapter 40 to chapter 48, deal with Israel in the land during the kingdom age. And there are a lot of parallels between these 8 chapters and the book of Revelation, but we'll get to that. Now, what we're going to do is kind of back up now and look at each area or each section in the structure of the book. Some we'll spend a little bit more time on. Others we will just kind of skim by and move along for the purposes of our study. The call and the commission of Ezekiel. That's where we are here, the call and commission of Ezekiel. It comes to Ezekiel in the form of a vision. Chapter 1, verse 28. Like the appearance of a rainbow in the clouds on a rainy day, so was the radiance around him. This was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. When I saw it, I fell down and I heard the voice of one speaking. I saw in verse 27, I saw what appeared to be his waist looking up. He looked like fire with brilliant light around him. Chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. He said to me, Son of man, stand up on your feet, and I will speak to you. As he spoke, the Spirit came into me and raised me to my feet, and I heard him speaking to me. He said, Son of man, I am sending you to the Israelites, to a rebellious nation that has rebelled against me. They and their fathers have been in revolt against me to this very day. The people to whom I am sending you are obstinate and stubborn. Say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Ezekiel saw, he fell down, he heard God. Ezekiel stood, he heard, and he was sent. And if we compare Ezekiel 1:28 with Revelation 1:17, as I said, in various places in Ezekiel, you will find similarities to Revelation. Revelation 1:17. When I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead. Then he placed his right hand on me and said, Do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. Ezekiel would see the signs of judgment in a whirlwind and in a fire that's going to follow. And then there were 4 cherubims with 4 faces, the same living beings that we see present in the Garden of Eden in Genesis 3:24. And they are also the same beings that are present on the throne of God in Revelation chapter 4, verses 6 through 8. Each had 4 faces: lion, ox, man, and eagle. And the commission to Ezekiel then begins at Ezekiel 2:3. Ezekiel chapter 2 and verse 3. He said, Son of man, I'm sending you to the Israelites. And that's the beginning of his call. And for several, or his commission, and for several verses then, God details the commission, this obstinate people that he is sending Ezekiel to. Now, after chapter 3, then we move into the judgments on Jerusalem, chapter 4 through chapter 24. Ezekiel told the Jews that were in Babylon that Jerusalem would be destroyed. As we mentioned before in the introduction, Nebuchadnezzar came into the nation of Judah, took people, but he did not finish the job when he took these people into exile. The city was still standing. There were still people living, Jewish people still living in the area. Ezekiel tells the Jews in Babylon, Jerusalem is still going to be destroyed. And he receives this message in a vision. And chapters 8 through 11 talk about this vision that Ezekiel has. And Ezekiel relates his vision to the people. It's a vision of the people of Judah profaning the temple. in verse 3, and we're going to be in chapter 8 now. In verse 3, Ezekiel speaks of the vision. He stretched out what looked like a hand and took me by the hair of my head. The Spirit lifted me up between earth and heaven, and in visions of God, he took me to Jerusalem, to the entrance to the north gate of the inner court, where the idol that provokes to jealousy stood. And there before me was the glory of God, the God of Israel, as in the vision I had seen in the plain. So somebody has placed an idol there, profaning the temple. It is an image of jealousy. God is jealous for his people. This idol made of whatever has been placed in the middle of the temple. So Ezekiel is saying this is what is happening in Jerusalem. And this is why Jerusalem will be destroyed. And the image continues, verses 7 through 12, or the vision. Then he brought me to the entrance to the court. I looked and I saw a hole in the wall. And he said to me, Son of man, now dig into the wall. So I dug into the wall and saw a doorway there. And he said to me, Go in and see the wicked and detestable things they are doing here. So I went in and looked, and I saw portrayed all over the walls all kinds of crawling things and detestable animals and all the idols in the house of Israel. In front of them stood 70 elders of the house of Israel, and Jaczaniah, son of Shaphan, was standing among them. Each had a censer in his hand, and a fragrant cloud of incense was rising. So what's happening? Here are elders in the temple of God, and they're offering incense to wild beasts and drawings on the wall. God, through his vision, through the vision he gave to Ezekiel, is telling Ezekiel, this is the kind of stuff that's going on. And people, this is why Judah is going to be destroyed. Verses 13 through 15. The vision continues. Again, he said, You will see them doing things that are even more detestable. Then he brought me to the entrance to the north gate of the house of the Lord, and I saw women sitting there mourning for Tammuz. He said to me, Do you see this, son of man? You will see things that are even more detestable than this. This vision of women weeping for Tammuz. Who was Tammuz? Tammuz was a Greek god. So this is going on within the temple of God. Women weeping for a Greek god or a Greek idol. Again, the temple is being profaned. The faith of Israel is being profaned. God is being profaned. Verse 16. He then brought me into the inner court of the house of the Lord, and there at the entrance to the temple, between the portico and the altar, were about 25 men, with their backs toward the temple of the Lord and their faces toward the east. They were bowing down to the sun in the east. What's happening here? 25 men are worshiping what? Worshiping the sun. Verses 17 through 18. He said to me, meaning God said to me, Have you seen this, son of man? Is it a trivial matter for the house of Judah to do the detestable things they are doing here? Must they also fill the land with violence and continually provoke me to anger? Look at them, putting the branch to their nose. Therefore, I will deal with them in anger. I will not look on them with pity or spare them. Although they shout in my ears, I will not listen to them. So God is saying, I'm going to deal with you in fury. Chapter 9 goes on to give a picture of what the judgment is going to look like. In chapter 10, we see the departure of the presence of God from the temple. Chapter 11, we see the departure of the glory of the Lord from Jerusalem. The holy fire will go out. The doom of the city is now sealed. And Ezekiel sees all of this coming. Now, Ezekiel didn't just preach through words, but Ezekiel preached and he prophesied through symbolic actions, what we might call visual aids. And they were done to impress the people and to cause the people to remember the message. Somewhat in the way that Jesus used parables or stories to illustrate spiritual truths, Ezekiel used symbolic actions. Some of these included in Ezekiel chapter 3, God causes Ezekiel to be dumb. He can't speak. 3 verses 26 to 27. I will make your tongue stick to the roof of your mouth, so that you will be silent and unable to rebuke them, though they are a rebellious house. But when I speak to you, I will open your mouth, and you will say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Whoever will listen, let him listen. And whoever will refuse, let him refuse, for they are a rebellious house. And then chapter 24, verse 27. At that time, your mouth will be opened. You will speak with him and will no longer be silent. So you will be a sign to them, and they will know that I am the Lord. So God causing Ezekiel to be dumb, getting the attention of the people, saying, listen, what he says to you is so. I am the Lord. His posture in public was even something he used, chapter 4, verses 4 through 8. God says, then lie on your left side and put the sin of the house of Israel upon yourself. You are to bear their sin for the number of days you lie on your side. I have assigned you the same number of days as the years of their sin. So for 390 days you will bear the sin of the house of Israel. So he's laying on his side for 390 days, bearing the sin of the house of Israel. Definitely something that's going to get the attention of people. Then there's the sign of a brick, chapter 4, verses 1 through 3. Now, son of man, take a clay tablet, put it in front of you, and draw the city of Jerusalem on it. He's drawing the city of Jerusalem on a brick. Then lay siege to it, erect siege works against it, build a ramp up to it, set up camps against it, and put battering rams around it. Then take an iron pan, place it as an iron wall between you and the city, and turn your face toward it. It will be under siege, and you shall besiege it. This will be a sign to the house of Israel. So he builds this scale model of what it's going to be like for the city of Jerusalem. And that is what would be happening very soon after he is speaking these words to the people in Babylon. Over in Jerusalem, this is what's going to be happening. There are going to be siege works laid. The city is going to be destroyed. Chapter 5, verses 1 through 17. You see the shaving of his hair. God says, now, son of man, take a sharp sword and use it as a barber's razor to shave your head and your beard. Then take a set of scales and divide up the hair. When the days of your siege come to an end, burn a third of the hair with fire inside the city, meaning that model city that he has made. Take a third and strike it with the sword all around the city, and scatter a third to the wind. For I will pursue them with drawn sword. But take a few strands of hair and tuck them away in the folds of your garment. Again, take a few of these and throw them into the fire and burn them up. A fire will spread from there to the whole house of Israel. And the rest of chapter 5 will deal more with the punishment of Jerusalem for their sins. In chapter 12, there is the removal of household goods. Chapter 12, verses 1 through 17. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, you are living among a rebellious people. They have eyes to see, but do not see, and ears to hear, but do not hear, for they are a rebellious people. Therefore, Son of man, pack your belongings for exile, and in the daytime as they watch, and that's very important, as they watch, set out and go from where you are to another place. Perhaps they will understand, though they are a rebellious house. During the daytime, while they watch, bring out your belongings packed for exile. Then in the evening, while they are watching, go out like those who go into exile. While they watch, dig through the wall and take your belongings out through it. Put them on your shoulders as they are watching and carry them out at dusk. Cover your face so that you cannot see the land. For I have made you a sign to the house of Israel. Now that's verses 1 through 6. And again, continuing through verse 17 of chapter 12, deals with this word picture or this image that Ezekiel is presenting to the people to understand their situation. In chapter 25, and it seems strange to us, but God tells Ezekiel that he is not to mourn at the death of his wife. Chapter 25, let's read from verse 15. Well, I'll tell you what. Oh, here we go. It's actually chapter 24. Chapter 24. And we'll begin at verse 15. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, with one blow, I am about to take away from you the delight of your eyes. Yet do not lament or weep or shed any tears. Groan quietly, but do not mourn for the dead. Keep your turban fastened and your sandals on your feet. Do not cover the lower part of your face or eat the customary food of mourners. God is speaking to the customs that they had for mourners, the covering of the face, the taking off of the turban, the taking off of their shoes. So God is speaking to those customs and saying, no, you don't do that, Ezekiel. So I spoke to the people in the morning, and in the evening my wife died. The next morning I did as I had been commanded. Then the people asked me, won't you tell us what these things have to do with us? So I said to them, the word of the Lord came to me. Say to the house of Israel, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I'm about to desecrate my sanctuary, the stronghold in which you take pride, the delight of your eyes, the object of your affection. The sons and daughters you left behind will fall by the sword, and you will do as I have done. You will not cover the lower part of your face or eat the customary food of mourners. You will keep your turbans on your heads and your sandals on your feet. You will not mourn or weep, but will waste away because of your sins and groan among yourselves. Ezekiel will be assigned to you. You will do just as he has done. When this happens, you will know that I am the sovereign Lord. So Ezekiel was making a point to the people. He had lost the desire of his heart, his wife, and the people are losing their city. They're losing the temple. They're losing Jerusalem, a desire of their hearts. Now, if you think about the ministry of Ezekiel and also think about the ministry of Jesus, Jesus used some signs and symbols as well in his teaching. Think of how often Jesus brought up shepherds or spoke of sheep. Jesus used Samaritans as well as signs in teaching during his ministry. In chapters 28 through 32, the focus is on judgment on the enemies of Israel. Now, for our purposes, we're just going to basically look at one example, and that's the prophecy on the city or the kingdom of Tyre. And you'll find that in chapters 26 through 28. And we're going to look at chapter 26, verses 7 through 11. For this is what the sovereign Lord says. From the north, I am going to bring against Tyre Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. So he's saying, Tyre, now Babylon's going to get you. King of Babylon, king of kings, with horses and chariots, with horsemen and a great army. He will ravage your settlements on the mainland with the sword. He will set up siege works against you, build a ramp up to your walls, and raise his shields against you. He will direct the blows of his battering rams against your walls and demolish your towers with his weapons. His horses will be so many they will cover you with dust. Your walls will tremble at the noise of the war horses, wagons, and chariots when he enters your gates, as men enter a city whose walls have been broken through. The hooves of his horses will trample all your streets. He will kill your people with the sword, and your strong pillars will fall to the ground. This is what Ezekiel is proclaiming, is prophesying that Nebuchadnezzar is going to do to the city of Tyre. And it's God's punishment upon Tyre for not coming to help at the bequest of Jerusalem. People of Judah had asked Tyre and some of these other cities and nations that Ezekiel will prophesy against for help when Nebuchadnezzar came, and nobody would help. God says this is what's going to happen when Nebuchadnezzar overruns the city. Judgment for the enemies of the Jews. In verses 1 through 10, we see the reasons for the judgment of God on Tyre. So starting at verse 1, and this is chapter 26. In the 11th year, on the first day of the month, the word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, because Tyre has said of Jerusalem, Aha, the gate to the nations is broken, and its doors have swung open to me. Now that she lies in ruins, I will prosper. So Tyre was very pompous about the fact that Judah had been defeated and Judah had been destroyed. Tyre was taking joy in that. And God says, they say, now she lies in ruins, I will prosper. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I am against you, O Tyre, and I will bring many nations against you, like the sea casting up its waves. They will destroy the walls of Tyre and pull down her towers. I will scrape away her rubble and make her a bare rock. Out in the sea, she will become a place to spread fish nets, for I have spoken, declares the sovereign Lord. She will become plunder for the nations, and her settlements on the mainland will be ravaged by the sword. Then they will know that I am the Lord. There are later judgments that come, judgments on nations for their pride. Ezekiel speaks to Satan. Ezekiel has the opportunity to speak to Satan about his influence on these cities. God speaks through Ezekiel and speaks to the king of Tyre. The king of Tyre is represented as having been like Satan or influenced by Satan. There's the unfallen nature. We're moving into chapter 28 now and looking at verse 12. Son of man, take up a lament concerning the king of Tyre and say to him, this is what the sovereign Lord says. You were the model of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. We'll go to verse 13. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone adorned you, ruby, topaz, and emerald, chrysolite, onyx, and jasper, sapphire, turquoise, and beryl. Your settings and mountings were made of gold. On the day you were created, they were prepared. You were anointed as a guardian cherub, for so I ordained you. You were on the holy mount of God. You walked among the fiery stones. You were blameless in your ways from the day you were created, till wickedness was found in you. This is the beginnings of Satan, the fallen angel. Through your widespread trade, you were filled with violence and you sinned. So I drove you in disgrace from the mount of God, and I expelled you, O guardian cherub, from among the fiery stones. Your heart became proud on account of your beauty, and you corrupted your wisdom because of your splendor. So I threw you to the earth. I made a spectacle of you before kings. Now compare that to Isaiah. Isaiah 14, verses 12 through 14. How you have fallen from heaven, O morning star, son of the dawn. You have been cast down to the earth, you who once laid low the nations. You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the mount of assembly, on the utmost heights of the sacred mountain. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. There again, speaking of the beginnings of Satan. Now, chapters 33 to 39 of Ezekiel deal with the resurrection of Israel, that they are going to come back. The city will come back. There are passages in chapter 34 speaking of the true shepherd that's going to lead Israel. Chapter 34 deals with false shepherds. Ezekiel 34, verses 1 through 10. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. Prophesy and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Woe to the shepherds of Israel who only take care of themselves. Should not shepherds take care of the flock? You eat the curds, clothe yourselves with the wool, and slaughter the choice animals, but you do not take care of the flock. You have not strengthened the weak or healed the sick or bound up the injured. You have not brought back the strays or searched for the lost. You ruled them harshly and brutally. So they were scattered because there was no shepherd. And when they were scattered, they became food for all the wild animals. My sheep wandered over all the mountains and on every high hill. They were scattered over the whole earth, and no one searched or looked for them. Therefore, you shepherds, hear the word of the Lord. As surely as I live, declares the sovereign Lord, because my flock lacks a shepherd, and so has been plundered and has become food for all the wild animals. And because my shepherds did not search for my flock, but cared for themselves rather than for the flock, therefore, here it comes, therefore, O shepherds, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says. I am against the shepherds and will hold them accountable for my flock. I will remove them from tending the flock so that the shepherds can no longer feed themselves. I will rescue my flock from their mouths, and I will no longer be food for them. Chapter 28 speaks of a true shepherd. Chapter 28, let's look at verse 11. We'll do verses 25 and go to the end of the chapter through about 27. And these are words of encouragement now that Ezekiel is speaking to the people. This is what the sovereign Lord says: when I gather the people of Israel from the nations where they have been scattered, I will show myself holy among them in the sight of the nations. Then they will live in their own land, which I gave to my servant Jacob. They will live there in safety and will build houses and plant vineyards. They will live in safety when I inflict punishment on all their neighbors who malign them. Then they will know that I am the Lord their God. That is the one true shepherd taking care of his people. We think of the shepherd of Psalm 23. Hebrews 13, verse 20, also talks about shepherds. Hebrews 13, verse 20. May the God of peace, who through the blood of the eternal covenant brought back from the dead our Lord Jesus, that great shepherd of the sheep. Now, chapter 37 of Ezekiel is a chapter that's familiar to many Christians. It's a wonderful Bible school song that you probably sung related to it. And this is the vision that Ezekiel is given by God of a valley and of the dry bones. Everybody remember the old song, them bones, gonna rise again. Them bones, gonna rise again. Now hear the word of the Lord. Well, this vision of Israel's resurrection, most people remember that, and it's something that I'm quite sure the people of Israel that Ezekiel was speaking to would remember that, as Ezekiel shared that with them. The vision is symbolic of national restoration in their own land. Ezekiel 37, verses 11 through 14. Then he said to me, Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. They say, our bones are dried up and our hope is gone. We are cut off. Therefore prophesy and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. O my people, I am going to open your graves and bring you up from them. I will bring you back to the land of Israel. Then you, my people, will know that I am the Lord when I open your graves and bring you up from them. I will put my spirit in you, and you will live, and I will settle you in your own land. Then you will know that I, the Lord, have spoken, and I have done it, declares the Lord. Now, this isn't speaking so much of individuals or an individual as it is of the nation, a national resurrection that Ezekiel is proclaiming to the people from God. The two kingdoms of Israel and Judah Israel, the northern kingdom, Judah, the southern kingdom, will be one again. And that's symbolized by the two sticks, which become one. Again in chapter 37, but in verse 22. I will make them one nation in the land on the mountains of Israel. There will be one king over all of them, and they will never again be two nations or be divided into two kingdoms. That's symbolized by this vision of two sticks becoming one. King David will reign over them. Now, we're not there yet. We're not there yet. Romans 11, verse 1. Jump into the New Testament. I asked them, did God reject his people? By no means. I am an Israelite myself, a descendant of Abraham from the tribe of Benjamin. And again in chapter 11, and this is verses 26 through 27, Paul writes, and so all Israel will be saved, as it is written, the deliverer will come from Zion. He will turn godlessness away from Jacob. And this is my covenant with them when I take away their sins. Chapters 40 through 48 speak of Israel in the land in the time of the kingdom age. In other words, the second coming. Chapters 40 through 42 deal with the temple during that time. Chapter 43, verses 1 through 17, speaks about the purpose of the temple in those times. 43, verses 1 through 17. Then the man brought me to the gate facing east, and I saw the glory of the God of Israel coming from the east. His voice was like the roar of rushing waters, and the land was radiant with his glory. The vision I saw was like the vision I had seen when he came to destroy the city, and like the visions I had seen by the Kibar River. And I fell face down. The glory of the Lord entered the temple through the gate facing east. Then the Spirit lifted me up and brought me into the inner court, and the glory of the Lord filled the temple. While the man was standing beside me, I heard someone speaking to me from inside the temple. He said, Son of man, this is the place of my throne and the place for the soles of my feet. This is where I will live among the Israelites forever. The house of Israel will never again defy my holy name, neither they nor their kings, by their prostitution and the lifeless idols of their kings at their high places. When they placed their threshold next to my threshold and their doorposts beside my doorpost with only a wall between me and them, they defiled my holy name by their detestable practices. So I destroyed them in my anger. Now, let them put away from me the prostitution and the lifeless idols of their kings, and I will live among them forever. So the purpose of the temple will be the dwelling of God in the kingdom age, the reign of Jesus, the glory of God. In Ezekiel 44, verse 2, the east gate of the city will be closed. Chapters 40 to 43 contain instructions for the sacrifices. The kingdom, this millennial kingdom, reference is made to it as well in Revelation. And we're going to go to the end of Revelation, to chapters 19 and 20. Chapter 19, verse 11. I saw heaven standing open, and there before me was a white horse whose rider is called Faithful and True. With justice, he judges and makes war. And then let's go to Revelation 20, verses 1 through 6. And I saw an angel coming down out of heaven, having the key to the abyss, and holding in his hand a great chain. He seized the dragon, that ancient serpent who is the devil or Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. He threw him into the abyss and locked and sealed it over him to keep him from deceiving the nations anymore until the 1,000 years were ended. After that, he must be set free for a short time. The revelation, the millennium, if you will, the events that Ezekiel speaks of, the visions God gives him, so closely tied in with what we see in the book of Revelation as well. God is faithful in his word. His word backs up his word. What Ezekiel sees is similar to what John sees in Revelation. What a powerful, powerful book, full of, yes, declarations of doom for the city of Jerusalem, but also encouragement to the people that there is a day coming. There is a day when there's going to be no more worrying about the city, no more hurts, no more pains. There is a day coming when God, the great and faithful shepherd, is going to shepherd his people. So let's do a little bit of quiz time. First question. Ezekiel was a prophet to who? We've been looking at some of the different prophets and whether they were prophets to the people in Judah or the prophets to the people in the northern kingdom, Israel. But who was Ezekiel the prophet to? Well, if you're thinking the Jews in exile, then you nailed it. Ezekiel is he's not in Jerusalem. He's not even in the Holy Land. He is in Babylon, and he is a prophet to the people who have been taken prisoner, to the people who are now living in a very strange and different land. And Ezekiel is the prophet to them, the Jews in exile. What is the central message of Ezekiel? They shall know that I am the Lord. Over and over again, God said that through Ezekiel. They shall know that I am the Lord. Early in Ezekiel, it is, they shall know that I am the Lord because I am destroying the city of Jerusalem. I am letting that happen because of the sins of the people. They will know that I am the Lord because this has happened. Then later in the book, it's, they will know that I am the Lord when I restore them to their former glory. They shall know that I am the Lord. Do you remember about how many times that phrase occurs within this book? About 70 times. All right, question number 3. Ezekiel used some unique methods to make his message stay in the minds of his listeners. Can you name one of those methods? Well, I'll just jump in, and one of those methods was the image of sticks, 2 sticks becoming one, symbolizing that the nation of Judah, the southern kingdom, and the nation of Israel, the northern kingdom, would become one. They would no longer be separated. And then, of course, you could have spoken about the most popular image from Ezekiel, and that being the vision of the clothing and the dead in the dead valley, or in the valley of death, the valley of bones. God judges the enemies of Israel. Name one of the enemies of Israel. Tyre is the one, Tyre. Tyre is the one that Ezekiel speaks to the most here. And that prophecy would be fulfilled. 300 years later, Alexander the Great is the one who comes in and fulfills that. Now, who was described as the evil force behind the king of Tyre? Who's in the background, the evil force there? Well, that's Satan. Next week, we are looking at the book of Daniel, and be prepared. Get your reading done ahead of time. Daniel will have both some history. Daniel will also have a lot of imagery. If you think there was a lot of imagery with Ezekiel, there's more coming with Daniel. And there's also more comparisons from the Old Testament to the New Testament, especially the book of Revelation, and some from Second Thessalonians as well, that will be very similar to concepts and visions that we'll see in Daniel. But I hope you can join us for our next session as we look at the book of Daniel. Thanks for joining us this evening. Have a blessed week. As always, I encourage you, be in church on Sunday. If you don't have a home church, then and you're local, please join us here at Forest Chapel. We worship at 10:50 in the morning on Sundays, and the church is located at the intersection of US Route 340, State Route 612, right across the road from Sammy's Station. Have a blessed week.